Hey guys, what's going on? It's John, the NYVideoGuy, and in this video I am going to be taking you through my process of shooting an interview. Now just a quick disclaimer, you're going to have to forgive me because I didn't light myself properly, I know, so don't send the YouTube police after me. I get it. This video is about how I shoot interviews, not how I shoot myself. So anyways, let me take you through my process, and we're going to go everywhere from deciding on where to set up the interview, how to set it up, lighting, audio, and just about making your talent feel comfortable. So let's start off. We're going to go into the actual video. Now, I had an old Samsung 360 camera that they gave me for free when I purchased one of their old phones. It was a promotion, whatever. Haven't used it in 3 years, and I figured it would be cool to throw it up on a tripod and show you guys what it's like inside the actual work environment. The quality on it's not great. If this video does well and people want to see my setup process more, I'll definitely invest in a better camera because that's what I'm all about. I'm a videographer, so I should have very clean and crisp videos. Anyways, going through this 360 camera right here, I'm going to show you the first thing that we do. If we go all the way back in the timeline, we established where we wanted the Dunkin' Donuts box to go. So the first thing that I do when I get to any interview that I'm recording is I establish a spot where I want as the background, and then I go from there. So I start from the back and move my way forward. So I figured in this environment over here, a nice background will be the bookcases. And this room was originally set up, all these chairs here in the background, they were in I'd say a horseshoe shape, whatever, it was around the room. So I had some of my people here help me move the chairs out of the way, and we kind of consolidated it to one chair, and this will be our background. Going forward from here, I'm going to set up my equipment. First thing I set up is my A-cam, which in this case will be a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. Go through that. I'm setting up the audio box up there, and personally, I like to shoot my interviews, my A-cams at 70 millimeters. I have a Nikon 24-70 lens on here with a Metabones Ultra, the 0.71, so it ends up becoming more than 70 millimeters, but you know what I'm getting at. I like to have it as zoomed in as far as I can. That makes for a nice, clean, buttery background, in my opinion. So right here, I'm setting up my first angle. I want to see what my A-cam's like. I want to set up the positioning of the chair, the background, and whatnot with a 70 millimeter lens. What I did right there is I adjusted the tripod because I like to have it chest level. I don't know if that's a popular opinion, but it's just what I like because I find that if you have the camera chest level, you get a nice shot between the waist and the top of the talent's head. So it's a nice balance. Moving forward, you can see that I went back and moved the chair a little bit because it wasn't framed up the way that I wanted it to be. But I think at this point I had my A-cam set, and it turned out to be very nice. It turned out to be this angle over here. So anyways, that's when I go ahead, and now I am setting up my Rhino slider because I like to add that as a B-cam to give it a nice parallaxed background. So moving forward, this is the Arc 2. It just was released. I was one of the first to get my hands on it, and this is actually my first interview with the Arc 2. Setting that up, putting the motor on, and those, I have two monopods that go at each end of the Rhino slider, and reason being is because my setup is fairly heavy with the cage and the SSD and whatever else I might attach to the Blackmagic, so that prevents it from wobbling left or right if I extend the monopods at the level that I want. The second lens I will be using, and it's usually what I prefer for interviews. Again, this is personal preference, so don't come after me if you have a different opinion. But I have I'd say an adapter that doesn't have any glass. It's not a speed booster. It's not a focal reducer. So what I like to do is use my Rokinon 50mm, and essentially that becomes probably about a 100mm lens. And that adds for a nice close-up shot along with the parallax in the background moving on the slider. Setting up the cables. What am I doing over here? Okay, so after I establish that first angle, I always like to set up my second camera, obviously, and then go for the audio setup to make sure that the mics aren't in frame or anything. Now here, I don't have a C-stand on this shoot, but I do have C-stands, and I do prefer using them over this. But this is actually a heavy-duty light stand, believe it or not, and it holds the mic pretty well. I use it on a ton of shoots when I'm traveling lightweight. So on here I have the Rode NTG3, and not really sure what boom pole that is, but the XLR cable comes out of the back. So here I am setting up the mic, moving back. What am I getting here? Attaching the XLR cable to the mic. Okay, so another thing I prefer is I have a splitter here. So the splitter goes from my Tascam and it splits into the Blackmagic itself. So that way I have two high quality audio sources. God forbid one of them would fail. Right there, I'm tightening the hard drive, putting the cables in. And now it's time for me to set up the lighting. So the first light that I set up in this shoot particularly was my Came TV Boltzmann. And I use that with a honeycomb grid. That way it acts as a very, very precise hair light, and I just love the little effect that it gives. Moving forward, attaching the power cable, raising it up, and I am going to place the hair light behind the interviewee. Sometimes I have it on a stand that goes right on top, but personally I prefer that it's in the background, and it just diffuses it a little bit nicer in my opinion. Moving on from there, getting a power strip, and I will be plugging that in. Luckily we had an outlet in the floor here. And what the hell am I doing here? Okay, setting up the second light, which in this case was the fill light. Now I have a 576 or something like that LED panel with a diffuse softbox that I throw over it, and that I place on the outside of my interviewee. So if you can see here, the light's over here. The key light will most likely end up over here. And reason being is because I like having the light come in from inside and having the dimmer, softer light come from the outside. Here we go, we're setting up our third and final light, which is the key light. The reason I set this up last is just because it takes the longest to actually set up because of the softbox. So we'll go through. The softbox is always a pain in the ass if you're traveling with it constantly. So there we go, we got the softbox on. Diffuser inside, there's a diffuser outside, and then I throw on a honeycomb grid. And the reason I do that is because it gives it a nice focused look on the light. A focused look on the subject, I should say. After that, moving the table out of the way because that's where my light needed to go. Making some final adjustments to the microphone, plugging the light in, again down here. And now all three lights should be on, and we'll have our subject sit down in frame. From here, we'll adjust the rest of the lighting. We'll adjust the hair light, the key light, and the fill light. And again, personal preference. When I light women, I usually like to give them a softer look. They usually tend to prefer that. As opposed to men, I give them more of a harsh, shadowy-like feel, I guess. So here we go. I'm adjusting the hair light. If it's too bright, you can definitely notice, and I don't like how that looks. So I like it just right where you can barely notice it, but you know that it's there. So here, I'm making some last adjustments to the height of the tripod. Still haven't set up that B cam yet, and reason being is because that's a very tight shot, so I'd rather have my subject in frame when I set it up for the first time. So she's in frame, going over her notes, her lines, focusing over here. And now it's time to set up that second camera on the slider. Getting my power cable just so I could plug it into an outlet and not worry about battery life. Moving forward, and this is the guy who will be conducting the interview over here. I like to have them sit almost behind the camera, but off to the side a little bit so it doesn't look like the subject is looking directly at the camera. Right now, he's too far away. You'll see that I tell him to move over a little bit later on. Again, I'm setting up my move with the Rhino slider. Lighting looks nice even with this GoPro or a Samsung 360 camera, whatever the heck it is. Okay, you see over here, I had our interviewer move his chair back and next to the camera. So he's behind it and skewered to the left a little bit. So it's looking like she's looking across, if that makes any sense. You can see in this video, she's not looking directly at the camera. I like to have them look the opposite direction of which they're sitting. So she's sitting over here, I'm having her look to her right. She's frame right, and she's looking to her right. Make the subject laugh a little bit, make her feel a little bit more comfortable. And it's hard for them to forget that they're surrounded by lights and cameras, but you want to make them feel as comfortable as possible and make them feel at home by asking them a couple of silly questions beforehand. As you can see, that slider is moving back and forth, and it's also panning along with it. So that shot turns into a nice, smooth, parallax background. So again, this one was shot with a 50mm without a speed booster, so it comes out to be about 100mm. And the other one was shot at 70mm. Which gave it a nice buttery background, but not too close. Anyways, this is how I go about setting up my interviews and how I end up conducting them, choosing the background, setting up the angles, and whatever. This is just my preferred method, but if you guys have a different method that you'd like to share, please let me know. If you have any questions, leave a comment. You can follow me on Instagram at NYVideoGuy, or you can visit my website, www.nyvideoguy.com.